All right, I will call the meeting of the Conservation Commission for May 19th open. I will do a roll call vote or roll call attendance. Tim Hay, chair, present.
Ritter is present.
Mo McCarthy's present.
And we're recording. And
okay, I do know that Lee called or got in touch with me. He won't be able to be here until 7:30 at the earliest. And I believe that Brian was going to be a little late as well.
I'll admit them in as soon as I see their name come up. And just to remind everybody, the meeting's being recorded, and it's also going to be recorded through the West Bridgewater TV cable access.
Okay, at this time, I will call for a approval of the minutes for May 5th.
Mo will make the motion.
I'll second.
Mo made the motion, Steve seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. And we have no new public hearings tonight. So I will call the Scotland and Maple Street 40B continued public hearing open. And John, I understand we have a set of plans.
Yes, I'm going to unmute Greg Driscoll, the engineer, and Bisher, the developer.
Good evening. Greg Driscoll, Jacobs Driscoll Engineering, representing Cochessa Developers for the Cochessa Estates project. Since the last meeting, we have gone ahead and revised the plans based on all the feedback that we got from John Delano, the agent, and the commission, and submitted a revised set of plans. And I can go through. Do you want to do a screen share or just go through the list, John? So John, would you like me to screen share or go through the list of?
Yes, go ahead and screen share.
I think you gotta allow me to do
Okay.
it.
I forgot how to do that. All right, I believe I did it for you.
Good. Okay, so since the last meeting, we did the following revisions. I'm not going to skip the page for this one because it's just removing the gate detail. We had a detail of a gate on there for the area between the two cul-de-sacs. Right through here, there's a paved way for emergency access and pedestrian access. This is an open space lot right here. And we're not showing that gate on the actual plan view, so we took it off the details. We added Maple Street improvements section detail. Let's get to that one.
Sheet 20.
Oh, is it 20? Okay, thank you. So originally we just had a typical roadway cross section. The Maple Street section is a little bit different. So we created a new section showing the 22-foot wider pavement rather than the 24 on the rest of the development. And how all those dimensions are going to work as far as the layout. Also added lot numbers to the grading sheets. It's just kind of something I was looking for because it's kind of hard to know where you're at in the plans if we don't have lot numbers on here. So this is a big lot right here. So that's where did it go? All right. Lot numbers are on the smaller lots are shown inside the houses. 3 and 2. I'm not sure what happened. These ones. Oh, these aren't here. Sorry. So that'll help us as we look at the plans and kind of navigate around. To alleviate the concerns regarding access to the knoll area, we have shown an additional spare force main going up to this area. So if there were to be an issue with the force main during an event where there's the area in here, the floodplain area between these blue dashed lines was an issue, you can always go back to the area at the pump station right here and switch from one force main to the other if that's an issue. As Bishop said at the last meeting, this is a leaching field which doesn't have much for moving parts. The water gets pumped up there and it'll just charge the system and leach into the ground. So all the mechanical equipment is down here at the end of the cul-de-sac.
You did change the grading to get up on the mound should there need to be some work or testing done out there, right?
Correct. That's my next
Sorry.
bullet point here. That so this grading right here shows that it's a little bit more of a drivable ramp, kind of up to this the top of the knoll. We added the replication plan notes and everything to the replication plan as requested. So all these notes and everything were copied out of the wetland replication document and added to the plan. So everything that's in the document plan is also on the plan set plan as well. Added proposed grading to the replication area. So let's kind of move that. So right in here, there was a comment that we're showing a replication area, but we weren't showing what we're doing with grading. So we're showing grading back to 63 contour, as well as the erosion control around the proposed replication area, wetland replication area. Proposed lot 25 on Maple Street behind number 152 Scotland. I was concerned about runoff from the property heading towards 152. So what we did in here is we showed a smaller, one of the smaller model houses. It may change, you know, as things get approved, but with this type of model house right here, shows the grading that as it's intended to get the water to flow this way towards the basin and not flow onto the 152 property. Lots 43 and 44 next to 140 Maple Street. Revised the swale and added to kind of scooch it up a little bit this way and give a drainage easement right through here. That's also noted on the lotting sheet as a drainage easement that I believe is 15 feet wide. Yeah, 15-foot wide drainage easement across here. Added a swale between wet basin 1D and 162 and 164 Scotland Street. So this area right here, we kind of brought the top of the berm back and created a swell back in here to keep water flowing on our property and around, and also take the water off of these properties to give it a place to some positive drainage to go to. And we added area drain inlets to the roof drain collection system as requested. This is the page. So we added area drains on these lots. Added one here going out to the system. Here, here, and here. That's 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So these 4 lots. And that is pretty much the gist of the changes that were made based on the notes that we took at the last meeting.
You did show the turtle nesting site.
Turtle nesting site isn't on these plans. It's going to be on the NHESP plans, which we'll get you a copy of when that's submitted, which is going to be shortly.
Okay.
And that could be a condition that we would rarely agree to, sure. Because I believe that area might move as to reduce impacts on the airport.
And is that pretty much it then?
That's the overview.
I'll turn it over to you, Tim. You can stop sharing.
Okay.
Any commissioners have any questions?
Excuse me, it's Mo. Would you go back, Greg, to the gravel road through the floodplain again? You kind of went over that quickly. The issue was that it wasn't raised enough. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was the concern that was brought up, that it wasn't raised enough.
So how much is it? Is it up now?
We're not proposing to raise it because of floodplain impacts.
Yes.
So we're showing a gravel road at grade. And if the concern is that there's an issue with the force main through this area.
Trying to get through if it floods, right?
Yeah, so there's no mechanical components up in here.
Yeah.
The pump and everything is down in this area.
Oh, that's right.
Here.
That's right. Yeah.
So we thought adding a spare force main in case there was a problem with the force main pipe would be a good solution to be able to switch it, over here in the upland area where the mechanical components are located.
That makes sense. Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, John, did you have anything?
No, I'm pretty well set. Any housekeeping items or anything else that might come up as a result of discussion tonight, we can take care of with basically orders of conditions or instructions for them to change the plan before it's finally approved. So I think at this point, we could open it up. If the commission doesn't have any concern, we can open up to abutters. And as I mentioned earlier, at the bottom where it says participants, you can click on that and there's, I think, an option for you to raise your hand. And if that doesn't work, just raise your hand and I'll see you and unmute you.
Actually, this is Ryan. I apologize. I joined a few minutes late. I had a note from last time regarding the drainage easement. Was that discussed? Again, I was late, so it may have been brought up prior to my.
Greg, you want to address that?
Yep. If you're referring to the drainage easement next to 140 Maple, yes, that was added.
Okay.
I'll share that real quick. Show it to you. So this area right in here. I modified the swell a little bit to make it fit within a 15-foot easement that's shown right here.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, then I'll open it up to any of the butters or public that's watching. Any questions or comments?
Just before anybody says anything, I have often asked this, and I know Bisher has answered it a number of times. But I just wanted to ask again about that outcropping of ledge that's on the opposite side of the road near the entrance at Maple Street, and how it would be a nice safety improvement if that was jackhammered down to grade, so that if anybody veered 1 inch off the edge of pave, they wouldn't hit it.
Am I muted? Can I speak?
No, you're unmuted.
Yes. No, this is actually, you don't need to worry about it because it is part of the decision from the Zoning Board of Appeals. So it's a given. We're going to do it. Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. You're welcome.
All right, now you can open it. Oh, Kim and Kevin have, I'm going to unmute you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm at 164 Scotland Street, and I just have a question regarding the water line. I just want to confirm that the water line is going to be brought to directly behind my property.
That is correct. That is correct, and it's shown. It is shown on a plan like that, and that it will be brought behind your property. That is correct.
Okay, I did see it on the plan. I just wanted to confirm that. And one other issue that I do have is the gravel access road that we just went over. I'm very surprised that's so close to my property. That's a surprise to me. How far from my property line is that road?
It's probably about 5 feet off or so. I'm not positive. I would have to measure it.
That's very concerning to me. That's where the play area is, their swing set. Why was that moved from beside my property? It was originally proposed to go beside the property out to the leaching field. I'm just wondering why that has changed.
That has to do with the conservation restriction areas and the National Heritage Plan that we're permitting with the state.
But Kim, this access road is probably going to be used once every 20 years or so. There is no need to be used. We like in development that we did off of on West Center Street, the leaching field. I mean, any activities to maintain the septic system is going to happen on the pumping area and the tanks, but in the leaching field is really, it rarely fails.
Okay.
And it really needs maintenance.
It really needs maintenance, exactly. And I mean, for 23 years over there, we haven't done anything to the leaching field, nor in any other subdivision. What does need maintenance is like the pumping stations and the tanks. The tanks need to be pumped every once in a while, every so often. But the leaching field, there's really very little activities that take place over there.
Okay. Is that going to be gated at all so that only people maintaining the equipment can get out there, or is that open for anybody to drive out?
Oh, gated? No,
Yeah.
no. Well, that's something we can discuss with the Board of Health. But this is not approving that yet. This is just for conservation purposes, and I'm sure the neighbors are not going to appreciate anybody driving there.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, and we'll discuss it with the Board of Health or even Zoning Board of Appeals once we're still, all those plans need to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals for final approvals.
Mm-hmm.
We're just now just to to address any conservation issue, drainage, stormwater management, and drainage issues.
Okay.
If I might chime in, we could legitimately put a requirement for signage that is not to be used except for authorized purposes, because it is through a sensitive resource area, and that should keep people from going down in there.
Fair enough.
Okay.
We can do that.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to raise their hand? Greg, if you could take the screen off, I probably could do it myself, but.
Okay.
Jamie Pope, I'll unmute you.
Yes, I just had a question about conditional approvals. So in the last meeting, you discussed that based on the septic plan designs, because of course they haven't been finalized yet, that you might want to revisit to determine, or even building changes in elevation of houses, that you might want to revisit the plans. Is there a way to put that in there as a conditional approval so that should the plans change, especially like Mr. Driscoll mentioned, they had a smaller house, but that could change. Do you know what I mean? I think that would make us feel better if it could be then looked at if there was changes in elevations and things of that nature.
So the first standard order of conditions that we always put on every project requires the developer, if they're going to change the plans that we approved, and that might be the result of the Board of Health asking them to do something different, or the zoning board asking them to do something, or if they propose something to the building department and the building department wants something changed, they have to come to us to show the change, and we have to approve it.
Okay. And then the second question I had was about the turtles. So if the engineering has already been done for the current proposed placement of the turtles, if you guys want to move that because of the contract that you guys have with the airplane people, is that incumbent on the town to now pay for additional engineering changes, or what's going to happen with that?
So the commission's going to have to discuss with the natural heritage and the wildlife people about the activities that go on the land out there, and everybody has to come to an agreement on what's going to be done. So that's going to have to be worked into the order of conditions in some way, because the town doesn't have the financial resources to do the engineering or the studies or the reporting that may or may not be required. So we have to really look at that permit that was issued by the MESA program to make sure that we're in agreement, since it is on our land now. So I haven't got a direct answer for you. It's just something we're going to have to work on to make sure that the town is protected.
Okay.
Well, we have 20 participants. Is there anyone else that I can't see on the screen here that I guess everybody's on the screen. All right, Tim.
All right, then hearing no more questions, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Oh, wait a minute.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second it.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So was that Steve that seconded it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And I'd recommend issuing an order of conditions within 21 days of the close.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to issue the order of conditions within 21 days of the closing hearing.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. I want to thank everybody for their patience and understanding through this process. It's been a while.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the commissioner as well. Thanks.
Thank you,
And
gentlemen.
any butters and everybody's opinions and criticisms and everything to help us tighten the plan up and make it work.
Great. I just want to remind Greg that you're on later on the agenda.
Okay.
For a different project?
Yeah.
He's cheating on me.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody, and stay safe.
Okay,
Thank you.
you too, thank you. All right, next we have on our agenda map 60, lot 22 South Street.
I'd invited the engineer to be on tonight, and he did indicate he'd try to join in, and I don't see him. So let me share the screen as to what we're talking about. So here's the South Street layout of the roadway. This is the proposed house, septic system, driveway, and we've been continuing this since about when the plan was submitted, which let me see what the date is on it. September 2018. Wow. So they've asked to continue it because of the probate issues, and they had not had the commission has not had a chance to have the thing reviewed by an independent 53G, because they need to determine whether there's additional wetlands out there. We never did hire the 53G. We got a price from them, but because the whole process came to a screeching halt due to the probate issue, it's been put on hold. So there's probably other things that could be done with the location of the house and the stormwater management system here, because I believe there's some wetlands in this area up here. So it might be encroaching in the 50-foot buffer. So there's a lot of issues with this, and they haven't even come to light yet because we haven't had a chance to have the independent 53G look it over. And the reason why we have a independent 53G is there could be a possible conflict of interest in a number of different ways by a number of different people, one particular member and one particular staff person. So I think we have to act on this. I did send out an email. I think everybody was copied on it, on what I requested from the engineer to provide. I'm going to stop sharing this unless one of the commission members has a question. Seeing none, I'll stop sharing it. So we didn't get that information. It doesn't look like it's forthcoming. And so my recommendation is to close the public hearing, deny the project without prejudice so that the applicant could come back and resubmit it without having to go through all of the filing fees, but will be required to notify abutters and pay the enterprise again when and if they do come forward again.
Okay, and I'm going to recuse myself from the voting on this, only because of conflict of interest.
So
I
that
will let Mo.
I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make the motion.
I got Ryan.
Yeah, I'll second. Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No.
All right, and then we need a motion to deny without prejudice.
Entertain a motion to deny this project without prejudice.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
All those in favor? Aye. Not in favor? None.
And I'll note that Tim abstained on that motion as well, or on that vote.
Thank you.
All right. So next is
All
Spring
right,
Street. Sorry, go ahead.
Yep, 200 Spring Street, requesting a one-year extension.
Yes, I don't know if everybody remembers Spring Street, but I'll bring it up on the screen. So here's Spring Street. There's a modern style home on 200 Spring Street that they wanted to add an addition, and it encroached the 50-foot buffer. And they had proposed some plantings to mitigate some of that intrusion into the 50-foot buffer. And they also provided a 5-foot access easement along this line here to the town-owned land, which is right in this area here. We issued an order of conditions. It will expire before they're complete. They complete the project, and so they look like they're pretty far along. I recommend that we do give them a one-year extension. So if no one has any questions about the plan, I'll stop sharing so I can see what's going on with the participants.
All right, I have no questions. Anybody else?
No.
Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to issue a one-year extension for order of
I'll make
conditions.
the motion.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. All right, that finishes our public hearing portion. And now we have some administrative discussion items. First is Captain Carlson Way. Wetland clearing and buffer clearing.
And for the record, I'll be. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
For the record, I'll be recusing myself.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Oh, that's not the right one, sorry.
It's so loud, I can hear it with this
All right, so last week, that's not the right one again. Sorry. So last week, I was asked to meet two of the trustees of the Captain Carlson Way Homeowners Association to discuss some of the work that they've been doing out there. They're landscaper people that do the maintenance on the lawn, which is along this wooded line here. We're complaining about the rose thorns and wild rose thorns and things that are coming out of the fringe of the woods and providing a safety hazard to the operators of the equipment. So the trustees had decided to trim back the vegetation and had gone into the shrub layer that's along this area in here. And looking at the vegetation when I was out meeting with them, I determined, based on my visual inspection, that they were working within the 50-foot buffer. And so we continued our site walk, but prior to that, they were asking if they could do the trimming along the edge of the lawn area behind the septic system, which is actually more overgrown than what you see here. This was a 2018 aerial photo. So the current photo shows more, I mean, the current situation is such that the thorns and the brush are hanging out over this lawn area, so it makes it very difficult for the landscapers to mow. So that was two areas, this area and the septic system area, and I'll stop sharing this and go to the next photo. So this is down towards the end of the cul-de-sac, and there's some recent, I won't say recent, there are some landscaping features that have been put in this area, and in my opinion, it's in the 50-foot buffer. As to where the original lawn was and whether they've encroached into the woods and extended the lawn or landscape area or not, I can't prove that. But that area is a place that's being maintained with more, not wetland type plantings, but more landscaping type plantings that you would find around most residential properties. And then we kept walking around the cul-de-sac and came to this area over here. So here's a cul-de-sac, if you can see my cursor. And this area here has got a vernal pool and is closer to the bordering vegetated wetlands. And so the original order of conditions require the installation of a post and rail fence, which I'm outlining with my cursor, if you can see it all right. And it runs all the way down in here. And the unit owner in this area is planting some landscaping features beyond the fence. Let me see if I have any more that I need to show you. So that's all the aerial photos I have for you. So the questions that the trustees had, and I'll let them speak for themselves, but The ones that I met with on the day that I did my inspection, they want to know if they can continue maintaining the edge of that lawn area. And I think I sent a report to the commission. And if I didn't send it to all of you, I'm sorry, but I think I did. I had suggested that they could trim up to a line that would extend perpendicular from the edge of the lawn surface up towards the clouds, an imaginary line, and not go beyond it, so that if there was overhanging limbs, they would cut to that imaginary perpendicular line at the edge of the existing lawn and not be in violation. But if they start to go beyond that and into the woods, only in maybe one or two areas, they would be outside the 50-foot buffer, but all the rest, they're in the 50-foot buffer and shouldn't be in there cutting back the brush. I also went over some maintenance ideas on the stormwater basin, and I think I answered pretty much most of the questions on that. So I guess what I'm recommending to the commission is to make a recommendation to the trustees on just what they can do there and what they need to do to possibly correct any intrusions into the wetland buffer. And I also recommended that the old post and rail fence that was put up for a visual barrier, actual barrier to the no-touch area, is in pretty poor shape, and that they could possibly put in PVC pipes with conservation signs on them. And I presented them pictures of actual signs and posts that were installed in another project. And the original order of conditions required one behind every dwelling unit. And I suggested that that those signs would probably satisfy the commission and would be a means of replacing that post and rail fence that's falling down. I also recommended that along the stormwater basin, since it's really a stormwater system and not a wetland, even though it has wetland plants in it and functions somewhat like a wetland, that there were no need to put any signs along that bank of the basin because it really isn't a protected area. So those are the highlights of it, and I'll let the trustees speak if they raise their hand, and let them make comments. So I see one hand raised, so I'll unmute. Is it Ms. Gray?
No, it's actually
Paul Marino.
Paul Marino.
Oh, okay. It's Paul.
He's my partner tonight.
I see.
I am illiterate with this material, so I asked Cal if I could watch with him. So that's why I'm at Cal's house.
We really can't see you, Paul. So Paul is the president of the Homeowners Association. There we go.
Yes, my name is Paul Marino. I live at 29 Captain Carlson Way, and I'm president of the Board of Trustees. And I try to be a good citizen. Just a little background. For 18 years, I served on the Zoning Board of Appeals in an adjacent town. And I'm also pretty heavily involved with the West Bridgewater Food Pantry. So I would never do anything knowingly against any town rules. But some of the background is that 4 years ago, we had the same problem. And we got permission to cut down any overlapping saplings that interfered with the edge cutting, and also was a safety hazard because the landscape was right on a stand-up mower, and they're kind of high. So we were given permission to cut down any sapling bent over into the grass area. And we all thought that the edge of the grass is where our property ends, but we found out that that's not true. So I know ignorance of the law is no excuse, but we just thought that our property went to the edge of the grass and that the 50-foot buffer zone did not interfere with that. So when the landscapers complained, I talked to some of my neighbors and asked them if they could help, because last time we had it done, it cost us $1,800. So in this day and age, I thought maybe saving our condo association at least that much, if not more, would be a good thing. So I'm 86. The guys, 3 guys that helped me are in their late 70s, and we're not doing this to cause any harm or anything. We're just trying to stop any liabilities and have them go to the edge of the property. So we began to trim back and cut a lot of it, as John described, was briar brush, and some of it was saplings that really bent over. And we thought we were doing nothing more than was done 4 years ago. And we worked on the project for 2 days, cutting back. And what we did is what we cut, we left on the ground. And then we're going to hire a chipper to get rid of the what we had cut down. Now, most of the work was on the odd side of the street, and one of your members lives there, and we, as I said, worked for 2 days cutting down what we thought was okay, and we went behind his house, actually, and we got no complaints from him. You know, on Saturday, we got the chipper, and we chipped all that we had cut down. And about 4 o'clock, we were getting near the end, and Mr. McCarthy came storming in, raising his voice at us, telling us that we were in the wetlands and that we would be fined and we would have to replace everything that we cut down. Now, he not only said that once, but he said that 3 times. And the
all right, I'm going to step in here for a second, and we need to concentrate on the issue of whether you're allowed to intrude into the buffer or not. So I don't think the question on what and how you did it is on the table. I think that's pretty clear. So I think at this point, you made your point about why you need to do it. And I think at this point, if there's anybody else that wants to talk, I'll let them talk.
Shut them off.
Hey,
okay, Mr.
John, at this point, the drainage system that's there, is there a maintenance plan set up for the drainage system?
I gave them one.
Okay. I'm wondering whether we could work into that also a maintenance plan for some type of 3-year or 4-year maintenance plan for the bordering vegetative wetland areas around the property as part of that?
Vegetation and invasive species control?
Yep.
Okay.
Because the other thing I know is, I think I do remember them coming before us once before for some trees that were needing to be taken down that were dangerous or had died or were problem trees.
Yes, I met with them and
notified us.
Yeah. And they did it, in a real responsible manner. So no issues there at all.
Right. So I don't think it's a chronic problem that's happening. I think it's just lack of knowing where the wetland line was and where the boundary was.
Right. So Mr. Olson wants to speak, and I think you're unmuted.
I was just going to ask you about if we could be allowed to the PVC signs and the medallion signs that we talked about. I was hoped that we would be allowed to use those. I actually went and got a couple of PVC pipes, painted one green, cut it on an angle to test to see how easy it would be for me to drive it down into the ground. And it went good. And if we're not allowed to use it, I can take it up out of the ground. And I just want to make a point. So if we go that way, it's one per townhouse, right? I mean, we have, as Mo knows, a unit there's 2 units per building. But we figure we need 1 in back of each building.
That's my interpretation.
Okay, just wanted to make sure of that, because we call a unit, there's 2 units to a townhouse. And
Yeah, I would think 1 for each structure would be fine.
Okay.
I think that'd be a lot better than having to put the split rail fence back up.
So
I did go over.
Much less obtrusive than what we
Yeah.
tried a few on. I find it, you can hardly see the thing.
So I did go over the replacement of the fence with Mr. Olson and Paul, and had suggested at different points in the angle points of the fence that's where the pipes could be put in to replace the fence, and they seem to understand that. But I do offer that when it's time to do it, when they want to do it, I can go back out and show them again, because it's not just a straight line. It's kind of a ziggy zaggy type line, and so I could offer my recommendations where those pipes could be put to replace that fence, if the commission wants it. Now, I think, Bill, are you done, Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Okay. Bill, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just a couple of clarifications.
Bill lives
I live at 31 Captain Carlson. I'm one of the trustees. You were talking about the trees that we had cut last year. That was a result of a tree falling on one of the buildings and causing quite a lot of damage, and it could have been a health issue. I mean, if the tree had fallen much further, would have went right across the bed that they were sleeping in. So that's why we asked to cut the trees last year. A couple of things. One thing that hasn't been mentioned is the catch basins. We have already hired Gabriel to take care of that. I don't know exactly when that's going to be. You're talking about a 3 or 4 year plan, and we appreciate that, but we're working at a faster pace than that. Probably within a week, we'll have a contract in place to do all those things that John suggested we do. One point I wanted to make was that at least some, I'm not sure I could say much of the grass, but some of the grass, just the lawn. In fact, in one place, if the tenant walked out his back door, he's within 50 feet of the wetlands. And we have grass growing within 50 feet of the wetlands. And it was all part of the original 40B approval and on the as-built plan. We're not trying to expand on that lawn. We're just trying to maintain that. If you don't cut the edge of the lawn, then it doesn't take long. In fact, the detention basin is kind of an example. It doesn't take long for vegetation to take over. Let me see my notes here. Yeah, Dick told you that we're already, working on those signs. It was my understanding that it was okay to put the signs between the buildings. There'd be just as many signs, but rather than put it directly behind the buildings, they could be between the buildings. Is that an option or not?
So these, I don't know if you've seen them, Bill, but these signs are very unobtrusive. They can be painted, the pipe, white pipe can be painted green. They can.
Yeah, I don't mind. I mean, I don't really care where they go. I just want to clarify it because I was told that they could be between the buildings, which is probably a better spot for it because nobody's going to walk through a house to go towards the wetland. They're going to walk between the houses and the sign would then be in front of them.
One of the things we
found
with this is the other places in town, the residents, when the house changes ownership, the new owners don't realize where the wetland is. And a lot of times it is right behind the building or the house. And they just keep expanding on it from their backyard, thinking they can walk out it and there's nothing there. And that's why we require a lot of times it right behind the house.
Yeah, well, I don't care which way it is. I just have heard two different things now. Of course, the wetland is probably behind the houses, but it transfers, it goes across the space between the houses too.
I think John was coming up with a compromise. We've a lot of times asked it to go every 20 or 30 feet along the whole property line. And so we were just trying to figure out a way to make it easy, but let any potential change of ownership or any tenants there now that live there know where the wetland line actually is and what's protected.
That's fine. If you want them behind the house, that's where they'll go.
And my only suggestion with a 3 or 4 year plan was just being able to add it to your maintenance plan you already have. If you think that you need to trim the brush back sooner than that, then I'd be more than willing to look at adding something to it where you could get in to do invasive vegetation control on a 2 year basis or something. I just was trying to give a suggested timeline.
Yes, we can do that. We tend not to look that far out because a lot of us won't be living in 4 years.
I'd like to go back to my suggestion that they be allowed to trim up to that perpendicular line from the existing edge of the lawn. And the reason for that is the line seems to, when you don't have a particular specified method of trimming back, it's kind of a judgmental thing. And somebody says, well, I think I should cut a little bit farther back. And then now they're getting into the 50-foot buffer, which is what the commission protects around the edges of wetlands. So I understand that most of the invasive species that are coming out into the lawn area are the rose thorns and some wetland transitional shrubs that lean out towards the light because of the shading that the woods provides. And those need to be cut, otherwise they will interfere with and potentially be a safety hazard for the landscapers. But I also feel that unless you have even if it's artificial in terms of imaginary line, as long as everybody understands that, stand at the edge of the lawn, you know where you're not going and where you can go. So unless they're going through a professional who goes out with them every time and cuts the invasive species out of the buffer, then I think we're opening it up to a willy-nilly type of decisions being made. And I would prefer not to have that happen. And they don't need to spend the money to have a professional out there with them. And in almost all of the maintenance that I've mentioned to them, I'm always talking about stockpiling the debris, whether it's chips or brush that's cut out of the 50-foot buffer and either hauled away or utilized by residents for landscaping. If it's wood chips and that kind of thing, they could use it for part of the mulching system. So we have Paul that's going to unmute now.
I just want to thank you, John, and the board for all the recommendations. We certainly will follow them. And again, thank you.
So unless there's anything more, Tim, we've got to kind of decide what the commission would like to see here. We have that issue of the trimming. We have the issue of the intrusion into the buffer by landscaping on two different sides of the cul-de-sac. We could allow what's there and make it clear to the trustees that they have to police the owners of those units to not do anything further. And that periodically somebody from the commission could go out and inspect it.
I'd be willing to live with something like that, John. I mean, like you said, without getting it surveyed and find out what the original plans had and where it actually ended at the lawn and how much difference there is, which I think is an expense none of us really want to have to deal with. This might be the easiest way to resolve it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's.
So we'll have a consensus. I don't know if we need to vote on it, but it's a consensus of the members.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement, John.
Yep.
Okay.
So the bottom line is it's a consensus to allow the trimming to the edge of the lawn and no farther, and signs behind each dwelling unit. And the post and rail fence could be replaced with PVC pipes and signs to locations to be agreed upon by the trustees and the conservation agent. And I think the last issue is that it seems as if the commission has a consensus to allow what's been intruded to remain and not to be expanded any farther.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Oh.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Olson? Yes, Mr. Olson.
So can you help me to get the signs, to get the medallions?
Yes, we can.
I'm not sure how. I'll email you at in the next few days.
Sure.
Okay. I don't know who to meet, how we pay for them. So, in this COVID time,
Well, we can communicate by email, and then I'm working on a system where people can meet me in the parking lot at a table with a plexiglass shield, and we can come face to face that way as long as everybody's wearing masks.
All right. And a check is okay?
Sure. And I can tell you how much it would be depending on how many you need.
All right. Yeah. I'm okay with that.
Okay.
All right.
That it?
Thanks, John.
All right. Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Next we have for discussion 11 Elizabeth Lane. And I believe from the
Stay on? Am I allowed to stay on?
Yeah, you can.
Oh, okay. Thanks. I didn't know if I was allowed to stay.
No, you're welcome to stay on or sit in and see what we do.
Pretty good,
All right, so I received a call from the attorney for the buyer of 11 Elizabeth Lane. The mortgage inspection that was done for the mortgage that's going to be given on this property discovered a pool shed right here in an area called restricted use easement. I went back and did some review on the subdivision plans, and apparently the Conservation Commission wanted that area to be restricted in its use so that it would protect a close by resource area. And it wasn't quite clear on anything that I read what that meant. And I would have to go back through the archives in the vault to see what the minutes were for that time period. That originally, I believe was, I'm not even sure of the date, but it was, a pool was added some years later, and Tom Terrell was the chairman. So it was before 2008, maybe, that this occurred. So I'll stop sharing that and show you what it looks like by aerial photography. So here's the lot again, with the house, the pool, the shed. I approximated the wetland line in this orange line, and you can see that the current owner has been mowing right down to the what is an edge of woods now, but definitely, in my opinion, within 50 feet of the wetland. And you can see there's nothing on this side of the pool for a sensitive resource area. So it's almost as if that restricted area has no meaning at this point. So the question that the attorney had is, can the pool house stay there and not be moved? And can the new owner, when they move in, continue mowing the lawn to where it is today? So that's the issue that was raised by the attorney representing the buyer.
Puts us in a sticky situation.
So I guess from a title point of view, it could be an issue for a title insurance company or something, and they wouldn't probably issue any. I'm not an expert at this, but I believe they probably wouldn't issue an insurance policy on that shed being an encroachment and at some point in the future be moved. But I think what the attorney is looking for is the commission going to make them move it? And if they're not, can the new owner leave it there and continue mowing the lawn? So it's a matter of whether the commission wants to enforce it or not, I guess, at this point.
Is the shed something that's big enough that it would have required the building inspector to sign off on a permit?
So I had heard from the attorney that the building department had issued the permit for the shed. Typically, up until recently with the new building inspector, the process would be that the building department would just issue a permit based on a sketch submitted, and sometimes not even a sketch, just the application to construct the shed. Now the current building inspector is forwarding all his permits for pools, sheds, buildings to the commission just for our comment. And it's not a perfect system because we have to rely on sometimes a non-surveyed sketch and that kind of thing. But I think this would have been caught if it were at this point in time.
Right.
But in the past, that was something they probably didn't even know. And my guess is the plot plan didn't show that restricted area on it when the shed application was made. So the building inspector would not have been aware of it. The owner who put the pool in, and I saw Tom Terrell's signature on it, was they did a request for determination because the house is more than 100 feet away from the wetlands, but the pool was not. So they filed a request for determination, and the commission issued a negative determination and allowed the pool to go in. And the shed was not part of that sketch that showed the pool. So even the commission at that time didn't know that there was a restricted area because it didn't show up on that pool plot plan either. So that's one of the problems with regulatory boards and commissions using less than professionally prepared plans that don't show the accurate information from easements and restricted areas and setbacks, that kind of thing.
I know it's probably tough to tell, John, but the mowed area inside the restriction area, that's probably been done for quite a while.
Yes. Yeah, I went back through the Google Earth history slide that you can do to go back over the years and see the different changes. And that's been ever since at least 2009 been mowed that way.
Yep. Well, I'm inclined at this point to say we're going to have to let it go. But if they ever try to pull another permit to do anything or replace the shed, then we could require markers and keeping things further away and enforcing it then.
All right, I can tell the attorney that.
I agree. What's done is done.
I mean, is this a decision that has to be made right now, or?
Well, they're closing soon on the house, and the attorney for the buyer just wanted to have some idea so that her client didn't get blindsided sometime later. And we wouldn't have known this unless she actually contacted us.
Right. Right.
So I think
yeah, we have an attorney actually doing their job and looking at plans.
Yeah.
And so I just say make them aware that they potentially are going to have to, if they pull a permit, they do have wetlands there and they're going to be required to deal with them.
Is that the actual demarcation of the wetland, John?
That's an approximation by my sketch using the aerial photography and the changes in the vegetation and looking at the original line that was submitted with the subdivision plan before all these houses were built. And what happened is the terrain dropped pretty drastically from the high point down into the wetlands. So it's a pretty distinctive line.
Okay. So the 50 doesn't come into play that much then?
So in this particular area is probably the 50-foot buffer, but down in here definitely got into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that may have been the area the commission was concerned about. I think looking at some of the reports done by, I think it was Hewitson had done the reports, Dr. Hewitson, that he felt that it was a condition that was more or less a change in the topography that allowed the water to sit there for a little longer periods of time that would promote growth of wetland shrubs.
Gotcha. Okay. Does that whole property drop off all the way around?
Yes.
Okay.
The old railroad line that came down through here is down below the grade here, runs like this. So if you were to keep walking along the rail trail across East Street and continue on towards the East Bridgewater line, you'd be coming right through here.
Okay. All right.
And it actually bends here where the old they must have had an old switching where they could change directions.
Sure.
So all that's down low too, and it's all wet.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I have nothing else.
So the consensus is we'll let sleeping dogs lie, and if they come in for permits in the future, we may ask for some mitigation.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, no problem with that, John.
All right.
All right, next we have 186 Manley Street. And that's a general stormwater permit.
I'm going to unmute Greg Driscoll and let him make a presentation.
Okay. Greg Driscoll, Jacobs Driscoll Engineering, representing Manny Pagingia of MJM Construction at 586 Main Street. When we first met about this project for the initial stormwater permit, he was looking to move his business there. He has moved his business there, and just looking to modify the site plan a bit. Let's see. All right. So what he's doing here is this all was proposed before, converting this building right here into an office. This garage building, this was all proposed before. What's new is the entrance here. This driveway through here was planned for future use. Now he wants to do it, and a contractor building right here with associated parking. And what was here before was this construction yard area. So that was over here, got flipped over there, and I'll show you on the next page. There was a stormwater basin right here that we flipped over to here. So a little bit of a shell game, moving things around on the site to make it work better for Manny and his vision of what he wants to do with his property. The notice of intent or the order conditions and the work for this isolated wetlands being relocated, that work is underway. That's this whole separate order conditions that was issued to the previous owner, the Spadias, and Manny being an excavation contractor, when he bought the property, he's doing that work currently. And I believe he's got John had met out there with Manny and Ed from my office, and Brad Holmes to discuss that when they got that kicked off. That's correct, right, John?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so that's this isolated wetland there that's being relocated. That's a separate issue, and that work is underway. The work on this building here is underway. The parking lot, the septic system up front here, and this basin, that's all underway right now. And he'd like to modify the site plan. We'll be going to planning board as well as the stormwater permit for moving this original stormwater basin that was here down to this area and adding a building. That's pretty much the overview of what we're looking to do.
Okay, so this additional building is storage only, or is it office space?
It's going to be a contractor bay building.
Okay, vehicles will be going into it?
No, it'll have an overhead door, but it's pretty much for like contractors, like a tile guy, window guy.
And the additional septic, okay, additional septic system for that is going.
That we submitted to the Board of Health. The septic system we designed out here for the original, we just expanded that.
Okay.
So we're tying this building into the septic tank that's over here. And there's a pump tank, I believe, right here, and that pumps it all the way up to the front. So
Okay,
we did submit that.
The building won't have any vehicles stored in it and no equipment inside it?
I don't believe so.
Okay. we just want to make note of that so that we don't have to worry about oil or gasoline or spills or anything.
Yeah, they will have floor drains. You know, it being a commercial building with an overhead door, we do have a industrial wastewater holding tank.
Okay.
Design right here, as well as, you know, there was one for this building as well. So, same deal.
And John, additional snow storage area, has that been put under the plan?
Greg, do you have an answer for that one?
We are showing snow storage all through here and all along here. I probably could have added some in here as well. But we're not showing it currently. Maybe is that snow storage right there? I think this was yeah, there's a snow storage area right here. So we got that clouded area right there. This whole area up front, all along the side over here.
Okay, it's a long way to the back of that from the front if you were trying to move snow, so I figured you'd have to have something around the new structure at some point.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
No. No.
John, did you have anything to add?
Yes, I'm going to recommend signs along the stormwater basin that no snow be dumped in there. And also along the southerly property line where Greg showed the snow storage along the abutters line there. Unless we can make sure that it doesn't impact the abutter. And it looks like there are some areas when I was on the site that the grading would drop off onto the abutter's land. That could become an issue. So I would recommend that not be an area that be used and that signs go up there.
Okay, we have a stone wall along at least a portion of that property line. And then, yeah, where it does start to drop off, we can stop the snow storage right through here.
Okay, that's a reasonable thing. I don't think it would go beyond the stone walls, so that'd be all right.
Okay.
All right, if nobody has anything else, I'll entertain a motion to accept the project change as presented.
I'll make the motion.
Whoop, do we have people? Mo, I'm sorry, I got you muted.
There I go. Okay, do we have a motion?
Yeah, I'm entertaining a motion to accept the project change as presented.
Steve made it?
Yep.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so moved.
All right, great. Thank you very much,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Okay. Have a good night. Stay safe.
You too.
Thank you.
And I think next we have the WB Mason invoice that John sent us copies of.
I sent that to you. All right. Also, did I send you the Allen and Major invoice?
Yes, you did.
Okay. I won't bring them up. I mean, I won't share the screen with them unless somebody has a question.
I got them, so.
So the WB Mason bill is for the table that I mentioned. I'm going to meet out in the parking lot with people with a screen in front of us so that they can pick up their plans or drop off their plans. We don't know exactly what the rules are going to be coming in and out of the town hall, but the less public we have coming through, and if it only takes picking up a table and it's fairly easy to move around and take down to the parking lot, subject to weather, of course, it might provide a little bit more safety for people during the COVID-19 situation that we have.
Can we get into the town hall, John, or not?
If you have a key, you can get in. Otherwise, it's primarily primarily if somebody wants to let you in, they might if they see that you're out there, but I don't know how successful that would be.
Okay, yeah.
But if you want to come in and you call me and, I can, if I'm going to be there. Right now, we're waiting, as of today, they were supposed to have a meeting with the emergency management team to decide what they're going to do for town hall employees. We haven't heard yet unless it's been emailed to us while we're having this meeting. But if we're going to operate with the doors closed, but the employees there, then just give me a call and we can make some arrangements at letting you in and coming up and doing whatever you need to do.
Okay, great.
All right. Any other questions?
Do we need a motion to let
To
John
authorize me
sign
to,
these?
yeah.
Yeah, I'll make that.
Second.
Moved and seconded for me to authorize and sign the slips. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None, so moved.
So that Allen and Major invoice was for the final review of the Scotland Street 40B project. And so I'd already gotten a check from the developer. And so I held off on bringing it to your attention until I knew we had the money in. So we did get that money in and I deposited with the treasurer.
Excellent.
So that's, that looks like it's about it, isn't it?
That's all that's on the agenda.
I will say that, yes, Friday, I got three filings in on Friday. An ANRAD on Lincoln Street, the old Hasiotis property.
Ooh.
A request for determination on just a garage addition on Matfield Street, and a notice of intent and stormwater application for a new business building that incorporates where the dentist is on West Center Street, near the, was it the old Daybreak restaurant? Was it? No, that wasn't. Was it that Sunny?
No, I know what one you mean.
Yeah.
So the dentist was in one building, and there was a house next door. The dentist has bought the whole two houses, or owned one and bought the other one, and they're going to tear both of them down and build one complex there. So those are on for June 16th.
16th?
No, June 16th.
16th. Wow.
June 2nd, we have the continuation of 400 Manley Street and maybe some minor things that crop up, but shouldn't be as long of a meeting as it was tonight.
Well, at least we're doing them.
Yeah.
You know, things aren't backing up like other commissions.
Yeah, I've heard some towns aren't holding them, and even I presume the zoning board, from what I've heard, has continued everything until June sometime.
Wow.
So they'll have a little bit of a backlog. We still have some forms to fill out and get commissioners to sign, and so I'll be talking to you on that once we get back into the town hall.
Okay.
Mr. Olson. Did I mute you? Sorry, there you go.
It may not be the business of this at all, but, and Mo might even been here around when this happened. Somebody was, if you go beyond our complex, the next street where they put that light up last year, seemed like someone was burning leaves or something over there, and it was heavy smoke coming into our process. Are they allowed to burn in the town?
Yes.
Okay, so, but do they have to get a permit or?
Yeah, you have to get a permit from the fire department, and I believe it's January 15th to May 1st, I think it is, or May 15th.
I think it's April 30th.
April 30th, so, yeah.
Because it came up in one of our meetings, that there was someone that was kind of excited about it, you know, worried about, you know, these woods catching on fire here, you know.
Unless it's agriculture, is that different?
Agriculture has some exemptions from what I remember.
But you still have to get a permit from the fire department and check every day that you're gonna burn to make sure it's okay wind-wise and dryness, so.
Okay. All right, well, it only happened one day, so, but, you know, you hear about nightmares where fires start going in these forests, you know, and that's pretty dense in there. I'm looking right in there, you know, and it's dense, you know.
Well, you have every right to take a ride over and see what's going on.
Yeah. Okay, that was
Great. Thank you.
Information. Thank you. It was a good, interesting meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Anybody have anything else? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank
Stay
you,
safe,
everyone.
everybody.